So I'm Ron Sweet. I've been at UTSA for over 20 years, and I retired from USAA 10 years ago. So I was at USAA for 23 years, and I've been at UTSA for 20 years. So there was a time where I was at USAA and teaching 5 classes at UTSA. I don't know how I did it back then. It's a lot easier now. At USAA, I started off in accounting, did that for 2 years. So if you're accounting or accounting finance, you should definitely come talk to me. I can give you some really good career. There's a way you can set up your career so it's just absolutely perfect, but you've got to do certain things. There's certain places you want to work and certain places you do not want to work in accounting if you want to move to finance. So I can give you that. Not that I had it planned out perfectly. I didn't plan anything right. It was all per randomness, and it just happened to work out perfectly. So I moved from accounting over to finance. In finance, I found my passion. I did something called balance sheet immunization, which I teach in my risk management class. It's my favorite thing to do. I love it more than anything in finance. You work a lot with actuaries, and you get to do a lot of quite advanced investing type of things. So that was a lot of fun. I did a lot of corporate finance. So I spent a lot of time on the corporate side and asset strategy side. And then the president of the investment company came by my office, and he asked me if I would interview with someone to replace the head of equities who had just retired. I said, sure, I'll do that. And then he goes, oh, and by the way, we're looking at you for that job too. And I go, that's kind of strange. You want me to interview someone for the job. So I'll give them a really bad review if you do that. But anyway, they brought me over to head of equities. We'll talk about equities in here. I actually don't like equities. I like bonds, but they made me head of equities. And then I retired in 2009. I had a great year in 2008. It was my best year ever at USAA. I'm sure it's all luck, but I don't tell any, when I was at USAA, it wasn't luck. I told them it was genius. We knew exactly what we were doing. But, the stock market was down like 35% in 2008, and my stock portfolio actually had a positive return. So and so when you have a great year in finance, you retire. Because you're going to have a bad year pretty soon after that. So you retire and they think you're a genius. So yeah, I got out right at the right time. So I have a lot of experience as a security analyst, as a portfolio manager, as an asset strategist. A lot of background. If you're interested, I've worked a lot with actuaries. I was an accountant. USA, I worked in life insurance, property and casualty, banking, real estate, even the retail side. But when I was your age, I was absolutely petrified. I was so scared to death. I had no clue what I was doing. I don't know why USA ever hired me. It must have been the worst interview they've ever had. But fortunately, I got through, found my footing, got some confidence. I wish I had someone to give me some advice when I was your age, but I didn't have any. I had to just make it up on my own. My dad is a microbiologist. My mom was a homemaker. I didn't have any finance people in my family. My 3 brothers are all preachers, so I'm the black sheep of the family. So I had no one to counsel me. I wish I had someone to give me some advice, because my last year at UT Austin was where my undergraduate was. Boy, I was burning a hole in my stomach. I was so stressed out. So if you're in that boat, come talk to me. You can call me anytime, but especially in the mornings, because I'm on a bike every morning for 3 hours, and that's a good time to talk to me. If you want to talk careers or about the class or anything like that, that's fine. Let me let a few more people in here. So I'm a little bit killing time to let everybody in. Hopefully we're up to 49. That's pretty good. 3 people waiting. Lily and someone I don't know. All right, it's 52. So I'm going to switch. Before I'm going to go over to class. Any questions? I mean, I'm serious. Y'all can call me anytime you like. I might talk your ear off if you want to talk finance and careers, but you're definitely open to do that anytime. You can email me. You have my email account. If you email me and don't hear back within 24 hours, email me again, or you might even call me then, because I just had a student email me on Saturday, and then he called me today asking me what happened, and his email went into my spam. So, I'm very good about getting back on emails. So if you don't hear back from me pretty quickly, you know, email me again. Is someone coming in? All right. No questions? We will do some group stuff in here, and I'll show you that when I do the syllabus. I usually have a group competition, which Sophia and Sally and Sergio, y'all know about that from last semester. I tried it last semester. I didn't think it worked too well online. It was a little messy, so I'm going to do groups a little bit differently this time, and not do the team competitions. So we'll find another way to get that to work. But I'm going to switch over to the syllabus. So you should be able to see my the syllabus for this class. There's my phone number there, my email account. Office hours, I will not be in the FSC much. I will have some hours, but right now they're not allowing me to allow students in FSC, so it actually doesn't really matter. We have to work that out. If I get some chance to get into FSC, I'll let you know when that is, and we'll work something out. I think they said if it can work, I can have as many as 5 people in there. If you are a finance major, you do not know what the FSC is, you need to figure that out. Very, very important. There's my supposed office hours, but essentially you can call me anytime. I have classes Tuesday and Thursday from 7:30 to 10, so that's the one time I'm not available. And there's a couple other times where I have other meetings, but essentially you can call or email me anytime. No textbooks. I don't believe in textbooks. I think they're ridiculously overpriced.
Yes, sir.
There are some good textbooks out there for this class. Probably the best one of all is I mean, you don't need it for this class, but if you want a reference book, it's the Bodie Kane. It's just called Investments. It is a very, very good book, and you do not have to buy the latest edition. All they do in the latest editions, they just update the stock market, which you could do yourself. That's a really good one, but you don't really need a textbook. There's enough stuff free online, and I'll have my class notes. And my exams, everything's based off the class notes anyway. I will give you some references, some Wikipedia and some Investopedia references and articles and things that you can look at to help you with that. The course objective is essentially to give you a strong foundation to talk investing. So an interview question that I hear this frequently, and Sally, I don't know if you got it, but I know USA has asked this question before. But they'll say, suppose I have $100,000. I want to know what to do with it. What would you advise me to do? In fact, someone was taking this class right before the first exam where we answered that question, and they had just interviewed with USAA, and the lady from USAA, I knew her pretty well. She comes out all excited and says, wow, these UTSA students, they're so smart. Well, they just been studying that question for my class. And so she says she was actually taking notes while they were talking, not to see if she wanted to hire them or not. She was actually writing it down so she can move her own portfolio. So it was, so this is a really good class to prepare you for a pretty common exam interview question. How would you answer that? Someone walks up with $100,000 and says, what should I do? And we'll answer that on the first exam. We're going to learn all the asset classes. We're going to talk about asset strategy and tactical and strategic. We'll also get on the execution side and mutual funds, ETFs, commingled accounts, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll get into securities. Some of this will overlap with your 3013. At least I know there's several of y'all from my 3013 in this class. I don't know why you took me again. So you just want more pain and suffering. But remember pricing the bond and the stock in that class. So we'll be doing that again. There will be some overlap. You'll see the capital asset pricing model again. You should already know that very well, but if you don't, we'll cover it from scratch. And we'll talk about portfolio management, which is a favorite topic of mine. And then the very end of the semester, we'll do derivatives, which is my most favorite topic of all. So we'll cover it. It'll be fairly high level. You can see the topics here throughout. We're spending the first part of the class getting ready for that first exam question, which is an asset classes, asset allocation, tactical asset allocation. And then we'll get into the execution side, and then bonds and stocks, and then finish up with derivatives. You notice these Zoom groups. So that's where I'm going to do groups. And because I don't like the fact that we're not seeing each other in person. I'm going to split the class up into smaller teams, and we're going to meet at least 3 times, or maybe more. I might do another one for another paper or for the final exam, where in smaller groups, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot on your papers, your exam question preparation, and make sure everybody's ready. I have students walk into the exam and go out and say, "Oh, Professor Sweet, I just wasn't ready for the exam. I didn't study for it correctly." I don't want those excuses. So look at those 3 days. You see what they are: September 24th, October 6th, and 8th. The 24th, you have a paper due on October 2nd. You need to have your first draft of that paper on September 24th, and you'll be in a group of maybe 6 or 7 people, and we're going to grade your paper in that session. And you'll know in that session whether or not you're close or way off base on that first paper. All right? What that means is, and we'll probably do it on the 24th and the 29th, because my classes are out on YouTube, so you can watch the classes at any time. So what I need you to do, this is very, very important, is if one of those dates is a problem, either one of those dates is a problem, you need to email me and let me know. I may have to have a group that meets, say, on a Monday or something if they just can't make that time. So I need everyone to be able to make either 24th or 29th. And then October 6th and 8th, that's the week before the exam, we're going to have a Zoom group where we're going to grade your answer to the first question. And then on the next one, we're doing a Zoom group where I'm going to give you the exam question from a previous semester, and you'll answer it in advance, and we'll grade that one as well. That's the question students do the worst on, but it's probably by far the best question. It's the question where you take everything we've learned in class up to there, and you have to actually execute it. What should you do if you think we're going into a recession? What are interest rates we're going to do? What are you going to do with your duration? What are you going to do with convexity? What are you going to do with small cap stocks versus large cap stocks? Are you going to go to in emerging market stocks? Are you going to put anything in real assets? That's the most important question, that tactical question. So that's a really big question, but it's a question a lot of students really struggle with. All right, so we will do these Zoom groups. We'll see how they go. And we might definitely maybe do another one for the second exam to make sure everybody's ready. I just don't want any excuses that students just didn't understand where we're going. So let me talk about the grading on the class, but if you have a question, pipe in, unmute, and just start talking. So the exam, we have 2 exams. The first one's pretty late in the class. It's not until October 15th. And that's because I want to give you plenty of time to prepare, and I'm going to talk about how you can really prepare for that first question. And then we'll have 4 papers. So the exams are 50% and the papers are 50%. The papers are all extremely real-life papers. In fact, there's a good chance you'll get one of these 4 papers as an assignment in a first job. So, so you'll see all 4 of them very real life. In fact, you need to be building your portfolio for LinkedIn. I don't know if y'all have been doing that, but all 4 of these papers for this class would work very, very well for you to place on LinkedIn. And we'll talk about the first paper. You can see on the next class, we're going to do another live session. I'm going to walk you through paper 1 so that you're ready for it, because you can actually start working on the paper starting next Friday. So I'll walk you through that paper. So we'll have 4 papers. There's paper descriptions out there. You can't really start working on papers 2, 3, and 4, so don't even worry about them. Just focus on paper 1 right now. That really is all you have to focus on the next few weeks, which means I'm expecting an incredibly awesome paper. I want you to blow me away with your paper. I've actually shown some students papers. I was speaking at a Bloomberg conference about 3 years ago. It's a conference of all professors using Bloomberg. And I showed some students papers. I got their permission. I was showing them how UTSA students were using the Bloomberg machines to write papers, and the professors didn't believe me. They said, those have got to be graduate level students. And I said, no, they're undergraduate. And they said, there's no way. So anyway, they were. Very good papers. I expect great papers because I know you're capable of it. But you'll get some practice in the Zoom session there. Let me give you my philosophy on the classes, and I apologize to the 3013 people and the risk management people taking this class. Y'all have heard my soapbox, but it's not my job to teach you. It's your job to teach yourself. You've got to figure out how to teach yourself. And that was my big shock in finance when I took an accounting job. Everything was laid out for me every single day. There wasn't a minute where I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do. And in my first finance job, I asked my boss, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, go read your job description and do that. Well, my job description essentially said, make USAA a better company. So it's okay, that's my job description. So that was my instruction. Fortunately, Lisa was working there and she helped get me going and she knew what she was doing. But finance, you have to learn how to figure this stuff out on your own. I took a course on how we teach ourselves, how do we learn. And he used the concept of SCORE, which is SCR. S means to space things out. Cramming for exams is a waste of time because you don't retain any of it. So spread it out. I'm going to show you how to do that for this first exam question. The second thing he says is challenge. Get yourself out of your comfort zone. Try some difficult stuff. I'll tell you right now, finance pays you for complexity. The harder it is, the more they pay you. In fact, it's really easy to pick your job in finance. If you're offered 3 jobs, you just take the one that scares you the most. It's that simple. Because that's what they pay you for in finance. So you need to get out of your comfort zone, try some difficult stuff. And in fact, if you have a finance job that you've figured out, you have to get out of it. You got to switch to another job. You can't be in a job you've already figured out in finance. You've always got to be challenged. So challenge yourself. And I'll do that in this class. So when we talk about convexity, you probably have never seen convexity before. It's a topic I'm not supposed to cover with undergraduate students. It's too advanced, but we're going to cover it anyway. Well, if you want to learn convexity, you can go out and look up option-adjusted spread in Wikipedia and read all about it now. I'm not requiring you to learn option-adjusted spread in this class. You can take the fixed income class Dr. Baynot teaches, and he'll cover it there. But if you read up on option-adjusted spread, it would link you to about 20 other topics like yield to worst, yield to call. There's all these other terms. And you'll start discovering that, my word, finance, there's so much stuff here, and you'll figure out whether you should be a finance major or not. If your reaction is, wow, there's so much stuff here, I'm so discouraged, then you probably shouldn't be a finance major. If your reaction is, wow, there's so much stuff here, I can't wait to read all this stuff, then you probably picked the right major. If you're curious, and that's, challenge, you could substitute the word curious. That's what employers are looking for. So you need to prove to them that you're curious, that you're studying finance outside of the classroom, that you're studying stuff beyond. And you got to do that, have that ready for an interview. It's like, our teacher was talking about this, so I went out and Googled it and found all this other stuff. Employers love that kind of thing. And then the last thing is randomness. Don't study one thing for 20 hours, split it up. So we're going to talk about cash, bonds, stocks, alternatives. Don't spend 5 hours looking at bonds. Look at bonds for a while, then go look at stocks. Or maybe look at duration for a while, then go to convexity. So split it up. So find a way to get this into your permanent knowledge base. I always like to ask students in the first class, if I were to ask you to sit down in front of a Word document, blank Word document, and type everything that you learned last spring, how many pages deep would you go? I know Sophia and Sally, I can see on the screen, I'm sure they go 20 pages from the class they took from me. At least they'll pretend like they could, but hopefully they can remember it. I've had students tell me they couldn't type anything. And boy, that depresses me, because what a waste of time this whole thing is if you can't remember any of it. So you've really got to get to the point. This is an important class for you to retain. If you're a finance major, you need it because you're a finance major. If you're not a finance major, you need this stuff because you've got to set up your 401k plan when you get your first employer. And that's the stuff we're going to be talking about. So figure out how to learn this stuff permanently. Highlighting notes, rereading notes doesn't work. You've got to talk about it. If you have a weird uncle with a lot of money, then call him up and say, Uncle, this is what I learned in my class, and tell him off the top of your head everything you learned in the class. As you're reading class notes, one really effective approach is to formulate questions as you go. So I'm going to tell you, convexity is bad when interest rates are volatile. So you need to ask that question. Why is negative convexity a bad thing when interest rates are volatile? Can you answer that question? Why does What does R squared tell me about parsimony? Parsimony, I can't even say the word. Those are kind of questions as you go through the notes and you ask those questions. Ask yourself that question, write it out in the margin. So those kind of things you want to do. You want to get this into your permanent memory. I want to see you in 5 years and you still know what DC cuts I means. That's our first mnemonic on bonds. It's duration, convexity, credit, US versus US, taxes, structure, and inflation. DC cuts I. I emailed a student that took this class several years ago, and I asked him, I go, Anthony, you remember DC cuts I? And he remembered the entire thing 5 years later. So it's possible. So I'm going to try to get it so you permanently learn these things, not just to help you with interviews, which is good, but that you can actually hit the ground running when you take your first job. And we've gotten that comment from several employees, like Goldman Sachs has told me they love UTSA students because it feels like they already have 6 months training when they start. And a lot of these are investment society members that have been down in the Bloomberg room, the FSC, and that's what you want, right? So just to give you an example, I'm learning Spanish. I guess you can say learning Spanish. I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm still really bad at it. But my teacher, she's in Peru and she is so picky. I'll use a word wrong. She's so picky and I'm like, why are you so picky? And one of my frustrations is, you know what I meant? She says, yeah, I know what you meant, but it just sounded bad. But I've kind of have figured that out now. If someone learning English were to say to you, yesterday she said me, you would know what that person was saying, right? But they would not sound like they knew English. Do you want to sound like you're learning finance as a second language and you just started when you're doing interviews for finance? Do you want to sound like you said, yesterday she said me in finance terms? Is that what you want to sound like in an interview? Or do you want to sound like a finance professional? So in this class, we're going to talk about it on Thursday. How do you talk in basis points? How do you use basis points to talk about the bond market? And you might say, well, you know what I meant, Professor. Well, you're going to ask, why am I so picky on the exams and on papers? I'm picky because I want you to know the terminology that you need to know. You need to learn the jargon. Hopefully you agree with me that you do not want to sound like a college student. You want to sound like an investment professional when you interview. So that's the reason I'm picky on these. So sometimes in Spanish, I can use the wrong word and no one cares because other Spanish speakers might do the same thing. And there's sometimes I use a Spanish word wrong when people go, wow, he doesn't know Spanish very well. And for someone learning Spanish for 10 years, for me to say something, I won't give you examples of things. I get horse and head mixed up all the time. So I say some really stupid things sometimes. But I'd rather people think I halfway know Spanish now that I've been studying for 10 years. So we're trying to teach you finance as a second language, and we want you to be as fluent as possible when you start interviewing for jobs. So when I tell you that spreads narrow, they don't come down, or I tell you that spreads widen, they don't get bigger, you need to know, why do we use the word widen? Why do we use the word narrow? Why do we use basis points instead of percents? And we'll get into that on Thursday. So, oops, let's see. Questions on that? I want to talk about this participation thing here, but any questions up to that point? Let's see. I can't see everybody. Everybody looks awake. No questions. Y'all got it?
All right. Sorry. Are you gonna hold like class every, like during class time? Hold like a Zoom meeting every time, or?
We'll have the live stream just this week. So today I'm doing the class intro. Thursday we're going to get ready for paper one. After that, we will do, and I'll show you the YouTube videos. I'll have the YouTube videos. You can actually start doing them now. I already have the first 5 weeks built. So you have the YouTube videos for the class. So that's the comments. I took a lot of comments from students last semester. I got about 140 comments, and that's one of the things I heard over and over again, is we don't want to have to sit here at 2:30 on Tuesdays, Thursdays. So give us flexibility. So I'm only doing that the first week. But that does get to the class participation. So any other questions before I get there? And I'll show you the YouTube here pretty quickly. So class participation, I normally take attendance, but I'm not going to do that semester, but I am going to give you, you can get at least 2% bonus for class participation, or you could get 5% deduct for lack of class participation. So what is class participation? I'll give you some examples. One real simple one is send me your class notes. So if you take really good copious class notes, you can email me the Word document. If you do them by hand, you'll have to PDF them, unfortunately. We have people coming in that were already in, so hopefully not losing people. So you can send me your class notes throughout the semester or right at the end of the semester. One thing I would say though is if you are typing on the professor's notes, make it real clear what your comments are versus the class notes, all right? Don't just email me the class notes. You won't get any credit for that. And say, here's the class notes, I read them. That doesn't mean anything. So what are your class notes? You can send me or call with questions or debates. If you want to debate with me, you can definitely do that. So, in fact, the best way to get something from short-term memory to long-term memory is get really mad about it. Call up that wacky uncle of yours and get in a big debate about investing, and everything you debate with him with you will go into your permanent memory overnight. But call me, question me. Professor, I read this article about oil prices, but in class you said this, and it doesn't seem right. Why is the dollar strengthening and oil prices are falling? That doesn't make any sense. You know, something like that. Or the Fed said this, and yet the 10-year Treasury yields are going down. That doesn't make any sense. Why is that happening? You know, why do we have the worst recession we've ever had in U.S. history, and the stock market just hit new record highs? Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Or I just read this article that said whatever. You know, that's the way to do it. The Zoom sessions are critical. I absolutely need you in those. So that's one area where I'll definitely be looking at who's there. They're going to be group sessions, smaller sessions. That would be really, really critical. So that can work. So those are some real easy ways for you to prove that you're engaged in the class. There may be other ways, I don't know, but those are certainly the ways to do it. On your papers, you can always go out and do more than what's in the rubric for the papers. If I see something really incredible on that, I might give you some class participation points for that. Especially if you send it to me and say, hey, would you share this with the class? I thought this was really, really, really good. And there are some places you can go. One of my favorite economists right now is Lacey Hunt over at Hoisington. If you go out to Hoisington Asset Management, you'll get all of his economic outlooks. It's quite fascinating. If one of you were to go out and read his report to prepare you for paper one, I'd be really impressed with that. I think that'd be really incredible. He has some really, really interesting things to say. But that I love. Students who teach themselves. And that's what employers are looking for. If you're a student that's waiting for a professor to tell you something, you're in the wrong profession with finance. That's just not, that works with accounting, but it doesn't work with finance at all. So prove to me that you're engaged, that you're curious, those kind of things. Look for stuff, look for articles. I read The Economist every week. The Economist has some great articles. I'm not a big fan of Wall Street Journal, but the Wall Street Journal definitely has some articles that you can find something related to class and send it over to me. You know, those kind of things are really, really impressive. Any questions on the participation points? So I'm not doing the attendance thing this time. Those that took me last semester, you had to send me your notes all the time. I'm not doing that. It's just some students would send me like 12 words of notes, and others would send me like 20 pages. It's like, how can I give them the same credits? So, all right, everybody's good on class participation? If you're not an engaged student, if you're in college just to get a degree, that's fine. All I ask is that you drop the class because I don't want you in the class. All right, and I know it sounds really painful, but I don't like unengaged students. So get engaged. You're gonna be doing this the next 50 years of your life. If you're already bored with it, change majors. Come talk to me on careers. I had one student email me almost, she was in tears, not in the email, but I could tell she's really upset. She said, "Professor, what you said in class made me change majors. I just don't want to be a finance major." And I think, well, that's good. It's better to find out now than find out in 20 years when you're in a dead-end job. I think finance is the most incredible, wonderful thing in the world. I loved it. I thought it was a great career, incredibly high stress. That's why I'm losing all my hair and it's all turning gray, especially 2008. I aged about 20 years in 2008. All right, so Victor from my 3013 class, he said, "Professor Sweet, you got to use playlists." So I figured it out. I'm not as slow in technology as you really think. So there's a playlist for this class. You can see I already have the first several classes set up through class 9. Class 10 are those Zoom sessions, so I don't have class 10 in there. So they're already there. You can see they're all about an hour each, and that's partly because I talk kind of fast. And, I also, moving between stuff in class cost me an extra 10 or so minutes, and the team competition, so I cut all of that out of the videos, so I kind of trimmed them down. The videos are somewhat color-coded, and so what you'll notice is there is a topic up front, and when you see the topic, each one of these is color-coded. So if you're trying to find when does he talk about the 3 questions, as you go through it, you'll notice that it's green, and then it'll switch to another color, like purple or something, so you can find where it is. I was thinking about doing a, telling you the time on them. The other thing I do in my YouTube is your notes are all in Word, and I don't like creating a whole new PowerPoint, so you now have a PowerPoint and your Word document, so you have 2 sets of notes. So what I do in the PowerPoint is I'm pulling from the class notes, page 4 of the class notes, and this is right from the class notes. I know it's a little wordy and busy, but I prefer to do that than have you have a separate PowerPoint, so you have 2 different things going on. One other thing I'll tell you is since I talk so fast, some people think it's just too fast. But if you click down here on the on YouTube, I don't know, in the settings, if you realize you can slow it down to 75%. I tried doing that in Camtasia, but in Camtasia, if you slow it down 75%, it drops my voice a good octave. I sound really bizarre, so it's better to do it on YouTube. So if you need to slow my voice down, you can do that. But they're out there. You can take notes. And since you have the class notes, you can take your notes inside the class notes. Just make sure you can make it really clear what your notes are versus what my notes are. You'll notice in the class notes, there's a lot of web links. Like right here is a link to William Sharp article. I use a lot of web links, so you know, there's a lot of places you can go and study more. Like this article here is only a few pages long, and it's a really excellent article. So that's how YouTube is set up. It should be pretty straightforward now that I have it all in the same group of, and they're organized hopefully in order. I'll be adding more. I'm trying to stay a couple of weeks ahead, so that when the paper grading starts happening, I want to give you as much feedback as possible, but it takes me a good 30 hours of graded paper. And so those weeks I may not be able to create the YouTube, so that's why I'm trying to get ahead. I didn't just take my YouTubes from last semester and just copy them over. I sure hope you don't have professors doing that. You should complain quite vehemently if that's happening. So hopefully I'm giving you brand new YouTubes and new links. I've already had some YouTube errors where I'll do an entire hour of YouTube and discover my microphone wasn't on. So really frustrating stuff. So, so Sophia, I think that answers your question somewhat as well. Of you know, you can watch these at any time. If you want to watch the next 9 classes now, you can do it now. You don't have to wait until the class. I don't know if you want to get too far ahead, but I'll talk on Thursday how to prepare both for the first paper and for the exam. And that'd probably be good to be careful of that before you start getting into the lectures too heavily. So here's our class notes. If you look on Blackboard, right below the live sessions, there's a button called Content. If you click on Content, you'll be able to find all the links for this class. So class notes, I start off with my introduction. I've already gone through this. So the whole key is to think critically, and I think this class will help you a lot in that because of the writing you need to do. You can read my notes on how important critical thinking is to finance. My expectations, I say come to every class. That obviously doesn't work. You need to listen. You need to write. I'm not a big fan of students typing their notes. You're much better off writing your notes, but typing is probably better than just listening. But be engaged. Have something there that you can write with. Ask questions, debate. Prepare for each class. So read the class notes before the class. So read the class notes, then watch the YouTube video, and then go back to the class notes. You should be spending several hours outside of class. I will give you some hints of things you can research. You should go research them. Forget about the grade. You're not taking this class for a grade or to graduate. You're taking this class so you can kill the competition when you get into interviews. You want to actually learn the material. This one doesn't apply, so I don't have to worry about students leaving in the middle of class. You know, I can't control all this computer use in the class, so I do want great papers. I have 3 example papers from previous semesters. Your goal should be, you want your paper to be the example paper for the next semester. That should be your goal. From now on, for the rest of your life, you want everything that you create to be the most incredible, awesome thing anyone's ever seen. So be interested. You can tell me your expectations for the professor. If you have any comments, you can let me know. I do expect you to learn hard stuff, to be challenged, write some great papers. I will be picky about your jargon and how you use it and how clear you are. Mainly because, you know, students are worried about grades. I'm worried about your success. I'm far more worried about your next 50 years versus your next 2 months. So I will be picky. I will be pushing you to do great work. When you turn in papers, I usually get them graded within 2 or 3 days. So I'll give you comments back. Unfortunately, it's tough for me to give you too much feedback back with the class of 61. But I can give you a detailed grade rubric, so you can see what I counted off on, and so you can have some ideas. If I've had some international students that English is a second language, and they're the most impressive people I've ever met in my life. It really amazes me. I had a student from China who had only been speaking English for 2 or 3 years, and he wrote some of the most incredible papers. He would show me his paper before he took it to his English tutor, and he already had one of the best papers in the class before then. But if you're worried about your writing skills, and I have some people who've been speaking English their entire life that are worried about their writing skills. Maybe they didn't have good English teachers in high school. Come to me, send me your paper if you want to spend some time on that. It's extremely important in finance that you write clearly, write succinctly. And I'll talk about that here next, what I look for in the papers, and I'll give you some examples. And we'll do that when we do the Zoom session. Certain things to look for really badly worded papers. So let's talk about that for the paper. So the paper, 40% of it is coverage, but another 40% of it is clarity. How well have you communicated? And I'll show you some example papers here example paper here pretty soon. We'll talk a lot about this on Thursday, but this is in general for all 4 of the papers. You need to write a paper that you can put on LinkedIn. It needs to be clear and have a lot of paragraphs, a lot of titles, indented quotations. I'll show you all that. Very well organized. Your organization should be really obvious just by glancing at your paper. Watch out for the typos. Don't send me a typo. I mean, a paper that has a bunch of squiggly lines because of misspelled words. Plagiarism, you get a 0 if it's plagiarized. I've had 7 or 8 students plagiarize papers. One student plagiarized several of his papers, and I just gave him an F in the class. It's before I used the plagiarism check on Blackboard, but I discovered it on his 3rd and 4th paper, and I just gave him. So don't even do it. There's no reason to do that at all. Write your own paper. If you can't write your own paper now, how in the world are you going to work in business? And in critical thinking, I say that's 20%. It probably should be 100%. But purposeful writing. Why are you writing this paper? Make sure you have your audience clear, and I'll show you that in the first paper. Be interested in what you're writing about. So start using these type of phrases in your paper. I find it interesting that I was amazed to see that this happened. I wonder what this means. In paper one, you're going to have to take on COVID-19 head on. Paper one is about the employment report that comes out next Friday and how the market's reacted to it. Boy, there's so much going on right now. It's possible we have a horrible employment report next Friday and the stock market jumps up 2%. Who knows? But I'm hoping it's an exciting one. Last semester, we had the most boring employment report we've ever had, and it was before COVID-19, and it was really just horrible. But since then, we've had, unfortunately, some really exciting employment reports. If you don't really know what the author is saying, let's say you're quoting an author from an article you wrote, and you're not really sure what they mean, you can say, I believe what they mean is this. So you might quote them, and you say, I think what they're stressing here or pointing out here is this. And then put the word critical in there. What I think is critical. In fact, I'll tell you, if you start using these type of phrases in your papers, you'll start getting higher scores in your papers. Professors actually pass out when a student writes, I find it interesting that in a paper, because professors think students are bored about everything. So convince them that you're interested, and actually don't just type, I find it interesting that, actually be interested. Find it interesting. This is your career for 50 years. You should be interested in it. You can add unanswered questions in your paper. So especially on paper 2, when we do the earnings announcement, you might say this earnings report, it looks like their margins are shrinking a little bit, but we really don't know that yet. We really need to see one more earnings report before we can figure that out. And that's perfectly fine. Be able to summarize, get to the point. Paper 1, and especially students, tend to be overly redundant in that section, and I'll show you why that's a big problem. State your opinion, but make sure if you're stating your opinion, you start it with words like, I believe, in my opinion, I think. I've had some students say that they've had professors tell them never use the personal pronoun, but that's not true in finance. They hired you for your opinion. So start sentences with I believe, I think, in my opinion. The one caveat on that is do not give me your political opinion. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but your boss does not care what your political opinions are. She wants your financial opinions, but don't tell her that you think Trump should win or you think Biden should win. That is a horrible thing to put in a paper. You don't know what your boss believes. Leave your political opinions out of it, but put your financial opinions in. Now, you can definitely talk about if Biden wins, I think this is what's going to happen, but keep it objective, based on the facts. Your opinion should be based on the facts. I had students saying, if Trump wins the election, the stock market's going to crash. That was 4 years ago. And Trump won, and the stock market took off. So, so the other reason you don't want to put your opinion down is your boss is going to find out how little we all know, right? Because our forecasts are so horrible. So put your opinion in there, have an opinion, but keep it objective, keep it based on facts, based on theory. Don't just give your personal opinion. Make sure you can do your own research. If you're just doing exactly what I ask you to do, that's not a finance major. That's a different degree. And the 2 worst things I could say after reading your paper is, so what? You wrote a bunch of stuff, but so what? Why are you writing this? So make it strong. All right, let me show you a paper. Here's a paper from a student from a previous semester. I love this format. You don't have to use this format, but I love this format. Let me tell you this format. First of all, I stole this format from a student taking my risk management class about a decade ago. What he got it from was he went out to the Financial Analyst Journal, which is a really famous journal for finance. There's a bunch of them in the FSC if you want to get some and read through them. Really good journal. He used their format. He made it look like a professional paper. I mean, this, you have to agree, this looks pretty professional, doesn't it? So it has a title, had the student name up here, talks what class you're in. A title, good use of title. He put that capital T there, which I think looks pretty strong. Look at the very, very narrow margins. Very narrow margins. Anytime you use 2 columns, you want very narrow margins. Notice the bolding throughout. He had a long quote. Anytime you have a long quote, you indent it. I mean, you center it, and you use italics with the quotes. Look how professional that looks. You have your graphs. Now, this is not a good graph. You want a graph with a good title. One thing I'll say on the graphs, anytime you use a graph, make sure it has a title, and the titles tell you why the graph is there. So he didn't do a good job on the title. with the date here at the bottom. I had a boss that said if I ever gave him something without a date, he would just rip it up, and he actually did that. I would walk into his office, he'd look at it and just start ripping it up. So if you don't have a date on your paper, how am I supposed to know how to take it? If it was written 20 years ago, I might not care. So have a date on it somewhere. A lot of use of bolding. That's how you show the most important information. He put some tables in there to show what's going on. This is not a good graph as far as the title, but you notice he has a graph where he put an arrow to explain what's going on in the graph. That's very, very good. So one thing I'll tell you right now, this is one of the ways I grade the paper. If you want to be successful in your first job, and I don't know, Sophia and Lily, if you followed my advice on this, and your interns, but if you want to ace it in finance in your first job, your #1 goal is to make your boss look like a genius. If you do that in your first job, you will do tremendous. If you make your first job making yourself look like a genius, your boss will think that you're gunning for her job, and your peers are going to be stabbing you in the back because they think you're trying to get ahead of them. If you just focus on making your boss look like a genius, you do exceptionally well. You have your second and third job, that's when you can start trying to kill the competition and trying to get your boss's job. But in your first job, focus on making your boss look like a genius. And that's how I read this paper. So I assume your boss has a meeting with the CEO, and she calls you and says, I'm going to be at work at 9 o'clock. I got a meeting with the CEO at 9:15. The employment report comes out today. I need a summary of that on my desk by 9:10. And you want to write a report so that when she goes to the CEO's office, she can glance at the report and know exactly what's going on. So you want to make sure it's extremely well organized, good summaries, good conclusions. You see this abstract at the front. I like in the abstract, you tell the most important stuff in the abstract. So I'm going to say what happened in this report. It was generally a very good report, beat expectations, and the markets reacted favorably. You have that up there. And then she has, everything that she needs, and then you have a graph, and you tell her in the graph why you put that graph there. So you can see, wow, the S&P really reacted positively to the report. Look at how that worked. I'm going to actually help you get some of these graphs. On the day the report's out, I'm going to actually copy and save some of these graphs so that you can use them, and I'll put them out on Blackboard. But I get more excited if you use your own graphs. There's plenty of resources out there where they'll give you this kind of information. So you need to think in those terms. How can I write a report such that my boss can do her job? If your boss is trying to figure out, why in the world do you put this graph in here? Why are you showing me this graph? I don't know why you even bother to tell me. But if you say, well, the market initially reacted like this, but later reacted like that, you have words in there. That all helps me to know why that graph is there, what you're trying to tell me. The indented quotes is really, really good. It's really hard to read a long quote if it's part of a long paragraph. Just looks professional. Think about this. If you had written this paper, would you have been ashamed to put this out on LinkedIn? And my guess is you would say no, that this is an impressive paper to use. And so I like this format. You don't have to use it, but I do recommend the 2 columns. I think it just looks a lot more professional. Just make sure 2 columns with a wide margin looks very unprofessional. I do like the full justify. Make sure if you use full justify, it's full justify everywhere except for on the quotes. Just make it look professional. Anything with your name on it now. Imagine if your boss likes this report, you get a $700,000 bonus, which is not uncommon in finance. So write it like it means something. So all right, questions on that? I've gone an hour, and you thought the first class would go 5 minutes. So sorry about that, but this is your last chance. I'll end 15 minutes early. So any questions? I mean, I'll stay over if y'all want to talk, but any questions on the class? You're getting a feel of what I'm looking for? You can see I want you to blow me away with your intelligence and creativity and thinking and research. I don't like mediocrity, so.
How many questions are on the exams?
The first exam has 2 questions.
Okay.
The second exam has about 8 questions. I don't do multiple choice. I don't know any finance jobs where your boss walks up and says, I'm thinking about buying Apple. Is it worth A, $500, B, $600, C, $200? You don't get those questions in finance. In fact, you don't get any questions in finance. So they're fairly open-ended questions. The first exam is a very bizarre exam, but I'm going to, in the next several weeks, I'm walking you through that exam in detail. Not only am I walking you through the answer, I'm actually going to give you rubrics, give you mnemonics to help you remember. And you'll have the video so you can go back and review it as well. And I'll give you other websites you can go through. So you'll have plenty of resources.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, so what we'll do on Thursday is I'm going to walk you through the first paper. I need to teach you one of the worst parts of paper one is the fixed income side. A lot of students are really uncomfortable with fixed income, so I'm going to spend a little time on Thursday talking about basis points and how to use basis points. Sophia, did you hear basis points at your job? You hear people saying 10 basis points, 20 basis points, or not?
Yeah, 125, 75. Yeah, depends on the client, depends on the basis points that we're using. So we have to be pretty careful.
Every
about
day
that.
or every once in a while?
Probably every week. Yeah.
In my job, it was every day because I sat next to the trade desk. The bond guys were constantly. So if you don't know how to talk basis points, we have to learn how to talk basis points. So now you know on Thursday, I have a topic I want to talk about. How can you get your brain to put that in permanent memory? Well, I would go Google basis points right after this class and know it before the class. And then when you hear it again, it just increases your confidence. And you don't have to memorize it, you just know it. But if you get the basis points wrong on the first paper, I take off a lot for that one thing. And probably 40% of the class misses that. I might actually call on some of you on Thursday and give you example, and I'll just tell you now, usually the first 3 or 4 tries, the students get it wrong, so just accept that. So if someone gets it wrong, it's just, there's no shame in that. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to using basis points. So just be ready. I just want to make sure you're engaged, not to scare you to death, but just make sure you're engaged, but also get some practice. And don't worry if you get it wrong, just know people get it wrong quite frequently. So that's what we'll do on Thursday. After that, you'll have the YouTubes, and I'll have the recording of this class, hopefully, if I did it right, out there somewhere. All right, if there's no more questions, that's it for the class. I'll stay on with any questions anyone wants to talk. So I'll see y'all on Thursday. Good luck with your other classes.